It was a Sunday evening, quiet in the house, the kind of evening where you expect warmth and rest. I had just set down 2 cups of tea on the table, hoping my daughter would sit with me for a while. She walked in, scrolling through her phone, hardly glancing at me. Her tone was sharp, colder than I'd ever heard before, when she muttered, "You're becoming such a burden, Mom." The words sliced through the air, cutting deeper than any knife could. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. My heart froze, my hands trembled against the cup, and I could hear the faint clink of porcelain as if the room itself had gone silent to listen to my humiliation. A burden? I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, to tell me it was a cruel joke. But she didn't. She didn't even look up. My daughter, the child I had carried, protected, and sacrificed everything for, had just labeled me as dead weight. I couldn't find my voice. My throat felt dry, my lips heavy. Inside my head, 1,000 memories collided all at once. Her first steps when she clung to my finger. Her first day at school when she cried until I promised I'd be waiting at the gate. Her teenage years when I stayed up all night working overtime just to make sure she had the dress she wanted for prom. And now, she couldn't even stand to look at me. I whispered, "Is that really how you see me?" Her eyes flickered up for a moment, cold and impatient. "Mom, I didn't mean it like that. But, honestly, you hold me back. I have a life now. You don't understand how hard it is to take care of you and also build my own future." Her words crushed whatever fragile hope was left inside me. My chest ached, not from anger, but from a grief that words can hardly capture. I wanted to remind her that every dream she chased was built on the foundation of my sacrifices. But what good would it do? So I sat in silence. My fingers curled tightly around the teacup, though I could no longer taste the tea. She went back to her phone, scrolling endlessly. Her face lit up with distractions that mattered more to her than the woman who gave her life. The clock on the wall ticked louder with each passing second, reminding me of the years I had given her, years I could never get back. Each tick was a question. Was it all worth it? Did she ever truly see me? My thoughts spiraled. Maybe I had sheltered her too much. Maybe, in giving her everything, I had unknowingly taught her to see me as nothing. Tears blurred my vision, but I blinked them away. I wouldn't let her see me broken, not tonight. I wanted to scream, to shout that I was not a burden, that I was the reason she had this comfortable life, this dream she was building. But instead, I swallowed my pride. Because sometimes silence speaks louder than words. And my silence in that moment carried the weight of years of sacrifice and disappointment. As she left the room without another glance, I sat there in the dim light, the untouched cup of tea growing cold. My heart replayed her words over and over, a burden, a burden, a burden. Each repetition carved deeper into me, but beneath the pain, something stirred. A faint, quiet voice within me whispered, "This isn't the end. She doesn't know what I still hold in my hands." That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I felt an unfamiliar strength rising through my grief. Her words had broken me, yes, but they had also awakened something she didn't expect. She had forgotten who I truly was, what I was capable of, and soon, she would remember. I couldn't sleep that night. Her words replayed in my mind, echoing louder than the ticking clock on the wall. A burden. As I lay in the darkness, memories from years ago came rushing back, as if life itself was forcing me to remember what she had forgotten. I saw myself as a young woman again, standing in a tiny kitchen with peeling paint and a broken stove, my apron stained with grease, my hands rough from scrubbing floors. Back then, money was scarce, but my determination was endless. I worked long shifts at a diner by day and cleaned offices by night, my body aching, but my heart steady with one promise. My daughter would never go without. I remembered carrying her home in my arms after long days, too tired to walk on her own. I remembered the nights I stayed awake sewing patches on her clothes so she would look presentable at school. I remembered skipping meals so she could eat more. My hunger didn't matter. Her smile did. Every sacrifice felt worth it in those moments. She was my reason to keep pushing forward. Even when exhaustion burned through my bones, I looked at her sleeping face and told myself, one day she will understand. One day she will see. When she got older, the sacrifices grew larger. I gave up the chance to remarry because no man came before her. I turned down promotions because they required me to move away, and I refused to uproot her from the school she loved. I even pulled from the little savings I had to pay for her dance classes, because when she said she wanted to twirl like the girls on TV, I couldn't say no. And when college came, oh, the battles I fought, the endless forms, the loans, the late nights working extra shifts so tuition could be paid. There were nights I thought my body would collapse from exhaustion, but every time she walked across a stage, accepted an award, or wore a cap and gown, I felt alive again. It wasn't my victory, but it was my reward. Yet now, standing in my living room with her voice still echoing in my ears, I realized something painful. She didn't remember those nights. She didn't remember the sacrifices. To her, they had vanished, erased by the comfort they had created. She had built her new life on my broken back, and in her eyes, I was no longer the foundation. I was just weight holding her down. I sat in silence, asking myself over and over, did she really not see? Or did she choose not to see? And still, a part of me wanted to excuse her, to soften the cruelty. Maybe she was stressed. Maybe she didn't mean it. But deep down I knew. Those words had come from somewhere real. They had been building inside her, hidden beneath smiles and quick hugs. And tonight, they finally slipped out. As dawn crept through the curtains, I realized the cruel truth. The child I had once carried in my arms now looked at me as a burden. And yet, she had no idea just how much of her world still rested in mine. The weight of my sacrifices pressed heavy on my chest. But beneath that weight, a spark of resolve began to grow. If she could forget everything I had given up for her, then maybe it was time for her to learn in a way she could never ignore. The morning after her cruel words, I sat quietly at the kitchen table, staring at the sunlight spilling across the floor. It felt almost cruel how beautiful the day looked when my heart was still so heavy. I thought about everything I had done for her, and then my eyes drifted to the photo pinned on the fridge. A glossy picture of the house she loved so much. Her dream house. She had called it her sanctuary. A place she could finally call her own, where she could host her friends, build her future, and flaunt her success to the world. She would speak about it with a glow in her eyes, walking me through every corner as if I couldn't already see it with my own tired feet. The modern kitchen with its marble counters, the spacious living room with the glass windows, the upstairs balcony where she said she would sip her coffee every morning, but what she never told anyone, what she herself seemed to have conveniently forgotten, was that her dream house had not been built by her. Alone behind the polished walls and the shining floors lay my fingerprints, invisible to everyone but me. It was my savings, chipped away from years of skipped luxuries, that filled the down payment gap. It was my name, quietly added to the paperwork. That helped secure the loan when her credit wasn't strong enough on its own. I remembered sitting in the loan officer's office, my hands folded tightly in my lap as he looked at her application. His eyes flicked up, doubtful. But when I placed my documents on the desk, when I agreed to back her, suddenly doors opened. She walked out beaming, thanking me with quick words that sounded more like obligation than gratitude. Still, I smiled. Because a mother doesn't help her child expecting repayment. A mother helps because love doesn't calculate debts. But now, after hearing her call me a burden, the house I once admired through her eyes began to look different. It was no longer a sanctuary. It was a monument, not to her independence, but to my sacrifices that she had erased. Every shiny tile, every polished surface carried a piece of me she refused to see. I remembered the day she got the keys. She twirled around the empty living room laughing, telling me, "This is all mine now." And I clapped as if I hadn't poured blood and sweat into making it possible. She saw herself as the queen of this castle. But in truth, I had laid the first stone. Now, Every time she bragged about that house to her friends, every time she posed in front of it for pictures, I couldn't help but wonder, would they ever know the truth? That behind the dream she flaunted stood the very woman she now treated as excess baggage? The house became a bitter symbol, a reminder of how much I had given and how little she remembered. Yet, as I sat in silence, one thought grew stronger. She believed that house defined her success. She believed it made her untouchable, and because of that, she had no idea how fragile her world really was. It started with little things. Subtle comments slipped between her smiles, as if she thought I wouldn't notice. When friends came over, she would laugh and say things like, "Oh, Mom doesn't really get this modern stuff. She's old-fashioned." The words seemed harmless on the surface, but I could hear the undertone. Shame. She wasn't proud of me. She was embarrassed by me. I tried to brush it off at first. I told myself, she's just stressed. She doesn't mean it. But as time went on, the little things grew sharper, cutting deeper. One evening, she invited a group of her friends and her in-laws over to the house. She wanted to show off the new chandelier she had just installed. I helped set the table, carefully laying out the plates and silverware the way she liked. I thought, maybe this time she'd acknowledge me. Maybe she'd introduce me as the woman who raised her, who helped make this house possible. But when the guests arrived, I was barely visible. She smiled brightly at them, showing them the open kitchen, the wide staircase, the view from the balcony. She spoke as though the house was entirely her achievement, her hard work, her pride. My presence was nothing more than background noise. At dinner, one of her friends glanced at me and asked politely, "So, do you live here too?" My daughter gave a tight laugh and said, "Yes, for now. But you know how it is. Taking care of older parents can be a lot sometimes." The room chuckled lightly, as though she had told a harmless joke, but inside my chest caved in. I lowered my gaze to the tablecloth, my cheeks burning with humiliation. She wasn't just dismissing me. She was mocking me in front of strangers. I wanted to speak, to remind her of the nights I had carried her through sickness, the mornings I had gone hungry so she could eat. But the words caught in my throat. I sat in silence, my dignity shrinking with every laugh that followed her careless remark. Later that night, after the guests had left, I tried to tell her how those words hurt. My voice was soft, almost pleading. "Why would you say that about me in front of everyone?" She rolled her eyes, arms crossed. "Mom, don't take everything so seriously. People expect me to be independent. Do you know how it looks when I still have to live with you? It makes me seem weak. I don't want people to think I can't handle my own life." Her words hit me harder than any insult could. I wasn't her comfort, her foundation, her pride. I was her weakness. That night, as I lay awake, I realized her mask of gratitude had finally fallen away completely. She no longer tried to hide how she felt. To her, I wasn't the mother who had given her everything. I was a shadow she wanted to erase, and yet she had no idea of the truth. She had no idea how much of her life was still tied to me, how her dream house still rested on the sacrifices she so easily dismissed. Her cruelty burned me. Yes. But it also clarified something deep inside. I could endure her insults, her shame, her disregard. But what I could not endure was her forgetting who I was, and soon she would remember. It happened on a night I will never forget. She had planned a dinner party, bigger than the last one, with her closest friends, her husband, and some of his relatives. She wanted everything perfect, and as always, I offered to help. I cooked quietly in the kitchen, stirring pots, checking the oven, setting the table just the way she liked. I thought that maybe, just maybe, if I helped enough, she would finally look at me with gratitude instead of disdain. When the guests arrived, the house filled with chatter and laughter. She glowed with pride as they admired her home. She stood tall, her voice bright and confident, showing off every corner of her so-called accomplishment. And once again, my presence was nothing more than a shadow. But then, the moment came. One of the guests, an older woman, kind-faced, someone I had never met, smiled at me and said warmly, "You must be so proud of your daughter. She's built a beautiful life." I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, my daughter spoke over me. She gave a laugh that felt sharp, rehearsed. "Oh, don't mind her," she said, gesturing at me casually as if I were a misplaced ornament. "She doesn't really get involved. Honestly, sometimes it feels like I'm taking care of a child instead of the other way around." The room erupted with laughter. Not cruel laughter, perhaps, but laughter all the same. To them, it was just a joke. To me, it was a knife twisting deeper than ever before. I froze, my fork halfway to my plate. My ears rang with her words. A child? A burden? She had said it before in private, but now she was branding me with that label in front of everyone. My dignity crumbled as I lowered my eyes to my lap, fighting the tears that threatened to spill. Her husband chuckled and shook his head, adding fuel to the fire. "She's exaggerating, but it's true. Her mom depends on her a lot. We keep telling her she needs to focus on herself more." More laughter, more smiles. Everyone nodding as though it were natural to dismiss the very woman who had made this life possible. I sat there, trapped in silence, every heartbeat pounding against my ribs. My food went cold on the plate, untouched. My throat was tight, my chest heavy, but I swallowed it down. Because what could I say? That this house they all admired was partly mine? That their beloved hostess was standing on the foundation of my sacrifices? No, to say that would make me look bitter, defensive. And so I said nothing, but inside, something snapped. I had endured the sharp words in private. I had endured the subtle shame she placed on me in front of her friends. But this open humiliation, this public branding of me as her burden, was the moment I knew things could not go on this way. As the evening carried on, I excused myself, slipping quietly out of the dining room. I stood in the hallway, staring at the framed pictures of her smiling in front of that house. Pictures of her life, her victories, her pride. None of them had me in them. It was as though I had been erased, as though I never existed. I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to steady my breathing. And then the thought came, sharp and clear. She doesn't realize that without me, none of this would exist. She thinks she holds all the power, but she doesn't. I do. The laughter from the dining room drifted toward me, muffled but cutting. And in that moment I made a silent vow. I would no longer allow myself to be humiliated, dismissed, or erased. She thought she could reduce me to nothing. But soon she would learn that the so-called burden she mocked carried the key to everything she held dear. The seed of revenge was planted that night, deep within the cracks of my broken heart. And like all seeds, it would grow, quietly, steadily, until the day it was ready to bloom. After that night, I stopped crying. Something inside me shifted. The tears dried, replaced by a strange stillness, as though the storm inside had finally found its direction. My daughter thought she had won, that she had silenced me with humiliation. But in truth, she had only awakened a part of me I had kept hidden for far too long. I didn't yell. I didn't confront her. I didn't beg for her respect, no. Instead, I smiled faintly the next morning as if nothing had changed. And in a way, nothing had, except me. As she bustled around her perfect house, talking about paint colors and dinner plans, I quietly went about my own tasks. But in my silence, I was moving pieces she didn't even know existed. I pulled out an old folder from the back of my dresser drawer, the kind of folder most people would ignore, yellowed with age, filled with contracts and receipts, paperwork she never bothered to look at. On one page in bold print was the truth she had long forgotten, my name. The house she bragged about, the house she claimed as her own kingdom, still carried the foundation of my signature. Without it, her castle would have never been built. I ran my fingers over the ink, a quiet power humming in my chest. She didn't know, and that ignorance was my weapon. That week, while she was busy hosting luncheons and posting pictures of her dream life online, I made a few phone calls. Calm, polite calls. To the bank. To the lawyer who had once helped me arrange the loan. To people who remembered me not as a burden, but as the woman who signed on the dotted line when her daughter couldn't. Every call was careful, deliberate. Not rash, not emotional, just necessary. I also began withdrawing little things she never noticed. My quiet contributions to bills, to groceries, to small household expenses. She had grown so comfortable assuming I gave endlessly, without question, that she didn't even realize the roots she depended on were starting to dry up. And all the while, I remained silent. I cooked, I cleaned, I listened to her complaints. Outwardly, nothing seemed different. But inside, I was building something strong, something unshakable. At night, as I lay in bed, I thought of her laughter, that cruel laugh when she told her friends I was like a child. I thought of the guest's eyes flickering toward me, pitying me. And instead of letting it break me again, I let it fuel me. Revenge doesn't always come in fire and rage. Sometimes it comes in silence, in patience, in knowing the exact string to pull when the moment is right. And I knew, without a doubt, that my moment was coming. Soon, she would wake up to realize her dream house was built not just on her pride, but on my sacrifice. And when that truth rose to the surface, her entire illusion would come crashing down. It happened faster than anyone could have imagined. One morning, the air in the house felt different, heavier somehow, charged with something I couldn't quite name. My daughter came downstairs humming, clutching her coffee, ready to post another picture of her dream life online. She didn't notice the envelope slipped under the door, didn't notice the urgent knock at 8 a.m. from a man in a dark suit. But I did. I always noticed. "Mrs. Parker?" The man asked politely when she finally opened the door, her smile sharp and distracted. "We need to discuss the matter of the mortgage and the current ownership standing of this property." Her smile faltered. The color drained from her face. "Mortgage? What are you talking about? This is my house!" But as he stepped inside, setting down thick files filled with stamped papers, her world began to unravel piece by piece. I stayed quiet in the corner, folding laundry as though none of it concerned me. But inside I was steady, calm, almost peaceful. The man explained how her payments had fallen behind, how the original loan hadn't been fully cleared, how technically the deed was still tangled, my name etched deep in the foundation of ownership. She sputtered, she argued, she demanded explanations, but every word only tightened the noose she had woven with her arrogance. And then came the final blow, foreclosure proceedings. Her voice cracked in disbelief. No, this is a mistake. This is my house, my dream house. You can't just take it away?" But they could, and they would. I watched her pace, her hands trembling as she dialed number after number, pleading with banks, snapping at lawyers, begging friends for quick cash. None of it mattered. The walls she had paraded as her trophies, the gleaming marble counters she flaunted to her guests, were no longer hers. That evening, as movers carried boxes out the front door, her cries echoed through the emptying halls. She clung to the staircase as if holding on tight enough could stop reality from slipping away. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't laugh. I didn't throw her words back at her, the ones where she had called me a burden, humiliated me like I was nothing. No, I simply sat at the kitchen table sipping tea as the echo of her broken dreams filled the house. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about balance. She had forgotten where she came from, forgotten the sacrifices that built the ground beneath her feet. But life has a way of reminding those who forget. When the last box was carried out and the locks were changed, she turned to me with eyes wide and hollow. For the first time in years, there was no arrogance in her voice. "Only fear. Mom, what do we do now?" she whispered. And that was the moment I knew. The house was gone, but my strength remained. The house was gone. The dream she had flaunted, the one she believed made her untouchable, had slipped away overnight. For the first time, the walls around her didn't echo with laughter or pride, but with silence, a silence so heavy it pressed against her chest. She sat across from me at the kitchen table of my modest home, her eyes red from crying, her posture no longer proud but fragile. For years she had called me weak, outdated, even a burden. Now she looked like a child again, lost and frightened. I stirred my tea slowly, letting the quiet stretch between us. I didn't rush to comfort her, nor did I rise to scold. Some lessons in life are not taught with words but with silence, with the weight of consequences pressing down like a stone. Finally, she whispered, "Mom, I didn't know. I didn't think it could all vanish like this." I set my spoon down and looked her in the eye. "That's the problem, sweetheart. You thought everything you had was permanent. You thought I was the one holding you back. But you never realized I was the one holding you up." Her lips trembled, but she didn't speak. I let my mind drift back through the years. The nights I had stayed awake, working shifts long after my body screamed for rest. The savings I quietly poured into her education, her business ventures, and finally, that house. She thought it was her dream, but she never once asked whose sacrifice built the foundation. I took a deep breath, not out of anger, but of release. I didn't take the house from you to hurt you. I did it to save myself, and maybe to save you too. You needed to see that pride without gratitude is nothing but an empty shell. Her eyes welled again. For the first time, there was no defiance in her. Just shame. You called me a burden, I continued softly. But the truth is, I was your bridge, and you burned it with your own hands. That house was supposed to be your future, but you chose arrogance over humility, appearances over love. And now you see, none of it lasts. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. A part of me longed to reach across the table, to pull her into my arms and tell her everything would be okay. But I didn't, because this was not the time for soft reassurances. This was the time for truth. As the days passed, she stayed under my roof, smaller now, quieter. She helped with chores she once mocked me for. She sat with me in the evenings, her phone forgotten, her eyes lowered. Slowly, I saw the arrogance peeling away, layer by layer. And while forgiveness didn't come overnight, something unexpected began to take root. Respect. A fragile, tentative respect that had been missing for far too long. I didn't rejoice in her downfall. Justice, after all, isn't about revenge. It's about balance. It's about showing those who forget that the ground beneath them was laid by someone else's hands. And as I watched her folding laundry one evening, the same way I had folded hers years ago, I realized something profound. I was never the burden. I was the foundation. And sometimes, life has to strip away the illusions for the truth to shine through. Her dream house vanished. Yes. But perhaps in its place, a different kind of home could finally be built. One made of gratitude, humility, and a bond that, if she nurtured it, could last far longer than brick and stone ever could. And so the burden became the lesson.